What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. I want to thank all of the new subscribers that have come aboard on this channel. And I want to ask you guys to do me a favor. If you can remember, hit that notification button so that you'll be notified of any and every video that drops on my channel as soon as it drops. YouTube has a stranglehold on our channels, man. Like, very little content that we put out actually gets sent out to the subscribers. Like my channel should be getting at least 10,000 views a video. Like, literally, when my channel was smaller, much smaller, I averaged 1,000 views a video. Like, they putting a stranglehold on our channels, man. So if you can, hit that notification button so that you'll be notified of every video drops on my channel and everybody's channels that's affiliated with the LDBC. In this case, the Lions Den basketball community. All right, so in this video, man, I just want to talk about something I'm noticing, man. I'm noticing a lot of people, and it's particularly people who are younger and have grown up in the LeBron generation, firmly entrenched in the LeBron generation. Many more and more people have been born after 2000 that are on YouTube, so they have no recollection of the Jordan years whatsoever. And matter of fact, they don't even really have recollection of the Wizard years. And also, what's starting to happen is you're starting to have some young people now on YouTube who barely even remember Kobe in his best years. You know, because you got to think about it. If you were born in 2000, you're 20 years old now, but you were only 5, 6, 7, 8 years old when Kobe was at his best. You know what I'm saying? Individually. Now, of course, you might remember the championship years in 2009, 2010, but when Kobe was like putting on his scoring exploits on those bad teams or mediocre teams, you might not have been watching basketball. You don't really remember it too well. So, yeah, it's getting to the point now where in a couple of years, you're going to have some people who don't even remember Kobe in his best starting to make YouTube videos. And I could tell. I could tell from listening to them talk. Like, they're going off of stats, and stats mean a lot, and they're going off of, I think, things that they read off the internet. But I'm here, as I've always been here for, and that's to present the full case, all right? Try to present the full uh, picture for you. I try to paint a full picture for everybody. All right, now look, there are some people who are increasingly trying to denigrate Michael Jordan's legacy, his career. Is Michael Jordan is he the GOAT? I believe he's the NBA GOAT. Some people don't. Some people might think it's whoever, whatever. You know what I'm saying? They're entitled to their opinion. But one thing I don't like or subscribe to is people who feel like they have to desecrate his legacy to prop up their player. I try my best to get away from doing that myself with, with players. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're so insecure about the player that you like, if you're that insecure about his resume, then maybe he's not the GOAT. You know what I'm saying? I don't see a lot of Jabbar fans, you know what I'm saying, desecrating anybody's legacy because they're secure in looking at his resume, or if they feel it's Kareem's resume, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? In the past, Magic, whoever. They look at their resume of the player and they're like, shit, I'm satisfied with that. Bring what you got. I'm a rep with this. But when you got to keep knocking down other people's accomplishments, then you can't really be that secure in what your guy has done. That's all I'm going to say on that one. But in defense of Jordan, right? Let me start by the beginning. All right. This notion that the league was in on it from the beginning, helping him out. Uh, um, he was from the beginning this guy that the league heavily marketed. It's a basically trying to insinuate like Jordan was this heavily popular player, heavily marketed. Um, so the league, through bias officiating, helped him to win championships. All this bullshit, ticky tack foul calls, all that type of shit. Let me tell you something. Number one, Michael Jordan, when he was drafted, let's not forget, number one, he was drafted third. Okay? He was drafted third behind Akeem Olajuwon and Sam Bowie. Michael Jordan was in no way, shape, or form as celebrated a player, as glorified a player as LeBron James was in 2003, and certainly not like as Zion has been this past year. Okay? That might be an acceptable conspiracy argument with those two guys, but Jordan, when he was drafted, he was expected to be a good scoring guard, but not the type of player that you could build a team around. He was expected to be something more or less like a Jerry Stackhouse or maybe a Michael Finley. That's what Michael Jordan was expected to be. But Michael Jordan was the ultimate overachiever. Okay? He came into the league. Many people probably expected him to average what he averaged in college, maybe 17 points a game, maybe his rookie year, or something like that. No. He came out from the get-go and put on a show. All right? Um, he didn't have the backing of the NBA. He didn't have the backing of his peers. All right? He came out, first 10 games of his career, he averaged 27 points a game. All right? During the his rookie year, he averaged 28.2 points per game. If I'm not mistaken, it was second in the NBA in scoring behind, I think it was second, no, it was third in the NBA in scoring, excuse me, behind, I believe, Bernard King, and I think Mark Aguirre was second in the NBA. A lot of people forget about Mark Aguirre, too. But Jordan was third in the NBA in scoring, and I think he was the leader in total points his rookie year. But instantly, veterans got jealous of him. He was infamously frozen out his in the All-Star game. Many people felt like he didn't deserve to be that heavily touted in his rookie year in the All-Star game because of the level he was playing at with the Chicago Bulls. And let's also not forget, even though a lot of people like to harp on the fact that he didn't win, all right, he improved the Bulls from 27 victories in '84 to 38 victories in 1985. And let's also not forget, because you're talking to an absolute fucking basketball historian here, all right? So you can pull those stupid arguments with some people, but you can't pull it with Two Raw. I'm going to tell you something. The people that like to sit there and say, well, he didn't win until Scottie Pippen got there, let me tell you something. First of all, in '86, Jordan only played 18 games, right? He only played in 18 games in the '86 season because of the broken foot. Now, in the games that he played in, the Chicago Bulls went 9-9. That doesn't sound like much, right? But when you factor in the games that he didn't play in, all right, when you take the games that he didn't play in, the Bulls went 21-43. And when in no way, shape, or form had any fucking hella chance of making the playoffs. And then, of course, in the first round against the Boston Celtics, who won the title, who won 67 games, who had arguably the greatest front line in NBA history with Larry Bird, who was essentially a power forward, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish, all right, all bona fide first ballot Hall of Famers, plus a Hall of Famer coming off the bench and Bill Walton, plus a Hall of Famer, all right, in the backcourt and DJ, plus a borderline all-star and Danny Ainge, all right, plus very high IQ basketball players coming off their bench, including a future Hall of Fame coach in Rick Carlisle, okay, plus savvy veterans, one like a Sam Vincent, all right, ML Carr and others, all right. I think ML Carr was on that team. Might have retired by then. But anyway, the point is, Jordan lit up that team for 49 points and then 63 points. All right. Ultimately, they lost. But this is the thing: Jordan in the 80s, right? He had to play on a team that consisted of a Dave Corsine, a Cal Macy, and Orlando Woolridge, who was an explosive scorer but didn't provide much anything else. All right. Uh, and was better suited for the West Coast offense, up and down, you know. That's why he did well with Denver when he went there. But other than Woolridge, who did he have? He had John Paxson, okay. He had young Scottie Pippen, who he helped to mold into becoming a great player. Horace Grant, who went on to hate Michael Jordan, but Horace Grant was helped and molded by playing with a guy like Michael Jordan. But until these guys developed, it was really Michael Jordan having to do almost every fucking thing on this team, playing in a conference where you had the Detroit Pistons, you had the Boston Celtics, you had the Philadelphia 76ers, okay, and you had the Atlanta Hawks, who were a better team than Chicago initially. You had the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were a better team than Chicago initially. Then you had the Milwaukee Bucks, who were the best team in the Eastern Conference, in the NBA actually, the best team in the 1980s not to go to the NBA Finals. People forget in '85 when the Bucks beat the Bulls, that Bucks team won 59 games. Okay? So why did Michael not win? Well, because number one, there were fewer teams in the NBA back in the 1980s. Number two, in the Eastern Conference, it was fucking loaded. He wasn't playing against a bunch of. He couldn't see the Bulls couldn't pad their wins with a bunch of bad teams back in the 80s. Okay, you got your ass beat by the Boston Celtics. The next night, you might have a somewhat easy game against the Indiana Pacers, who by no means was an easy match, easy victory. But then the next night, you got to go against the Detroit Pistons, and then you got to go to play the New York Knicks, and you got to go against Bernard King. All right, then later on, you got to contend with Patrick Ewing. All right, then the next night, you know what I'm saying? You got to go play LA Lakers. Then you got to play the Utah Jazz with a young, formidable Karl Malone and John Stockton. Then the next night, guess what? Now you got to play Dominique Wilkins and Atlanta Hawks. Then you got to go play the Detroit Bad Boys again. Then, guess you got to play Milwaukee Bucks, who on pace to win 58 games. That's the fucking road that Jordan had to go through in the fucking 1980s. And it pisses me off when people don't know what the fuck they talking about and sit there and say this guy played nobody. That's why he didn't win any fucking championships, because he didn't have anybody he was playing with. Well, all these guys had fucking super teams. Charles Barkley was drafted to a fucking super team that already fucking had Andrew Toney and Julius Erving and Moses Malone. All right? He got drafted to a fucking super team. The Lakers were a super team. The Detroit Pistons became a super team. Michael Jordan, who the fuck he had? He had fucking Dave Corzine. All right? And Cal Macy. And a bunch of drug addicts on his fucking team until they fucking clean up their roster. And then when the Bulls did start emerging as a powerhouse team, okay, when they did start emerging as a powerhouse team, the only team that got in their way was the Pistons, who were beating everybody. Okay, they won 63 games in a loaded NBA in '89, then '59 the very next year. All right? They swept the Showtime Lakers in '89, and they beat the Portland Trailblazers by 5 in 1990. That was the only team that stood in their way. If it wasn't for the Pistons, the Bulls would have gotten to the NBA Finals at least in 1990, possibly 89 and 90. I think they would have actually went to the finals back to back in 89 and 90 if it wasn't for the Pistons. Then I just get tired of these excuses, man. When the Bulls finally broke it open in 91 and they won the title, then all of a sudden you had the excuses. Well, they only won because of injuries. They only won because the Pistons got old. Well, look, it's not Jordan and Pippen and Horace Grant's fault that the Boston Celtics, who started off 29-5 in 1991, injuries derailed them. Okay, it's not their fault. Just like it wasn't Kawhi Leonard and the Toronto Raptors' fault that injuries, hurt the Warriors in 2019, and it's not the Warriors' fault that injuries hurt LeBron and the Cavaliers in 2015. It sucks, okay, it does, but it happens. It's a part of sports, okay? The age thing pisses me off because in 91, Isaiah Thomas had just turned 30. Joe Dumars was 28. Dennis Rodman was 29, about to turn 30. Okay. Bill Laimbeer was 33. That's getting up there. But in 98, the Bulls, Ron Harper was 34. Jordan was 35. Pippen was 32. Rodman was 37. Why was that team able to win the championship? But with the Pistons, they get this excuse that they were old. You know? And as far as like his final opponents, being weak, let me see. The Lakers upset the Portland Trailblazers in the Western Conference Finals, memory serving me correctly, in 91. Right? Michael and the Lakers more or less dismantled that team in 5. Magic, now granted, Worthy, I think, was injured during that series. But the Bulls thoroughly defeated that team. If it wasn't for a Sam Perkins three-pointer, they should have swept that team. The Bulls were just infinitely better than everybody else. When Michaels figured it out, when he started expanding his game and learned how to play off the ball, it opened up the Bulls so much. It opened up his game so much. It made him a much more dangerous player. And that's what truly, I think, made the Bulls so much better and made him more unguardable. You knew what he was going to do, but you couldn't stop it. As far as the opponents are concerned, when you ask anybody what's the best Phoenix Suns team ever, what answer do you usually get? The 93 Phoenix Suns. If you ask anybody what the best Utah Jazz teams of all time were in their franchise history, you get the 97 and 98 Utah Jazz. When you ask anybody who are the best Sonics teams of all time, you might get some answers saying it was the 79 Sonics that won the championship, of course. They went 52 and 30. But some people will say it was the 64 win Sonics in 96. All right. When it comes to franchise records, as far as wins are concerned, that belongs, as far as Portland's concerned, it's those Clyde Drexler Portland teams of the early 1990s that won 63, 61 games. What do all these teams have in common? They all played in the Michael Jordan era, all right? When people sit there and say that there were no stars in the 90s, what they really are telling me is that you don't know much about the 1990s as far as stars are concerned. All you know are a handful of players. What you really don't know is that virtually every team in the 1990s had a star. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't just 5 or 6 stars in the NBA. Virtually every team had an all-star or a near all-star level player on its roster, if not more than one. So much so that there were numerous stars in the NBA that didn't get all-star nods because there were so many stars. Believe you me, if Reggie Miller was playing in today's NBA, he would have had more than 4 all-star nods. The reason why he didn't have as many all-star nods is because there were just that many more players better than him in the Eastern Conference at that position. Because Reggie Miller in today's basketball would be something like Klay Thompson. Not as defensively gifted as Klay, but he would be something like Klay Thompson. All right. And now the thing about the NBA being watered down in the 90s, maybe, in the mid to late 90s, that's an argument when the league added Toronto Raptors and the then Vancouver Grizzlies. Okay, that might be an argument. But even with that, the league still only had 29 teams as opposed to 30 now when they added the New Orleans Pelicans. All right. Um, Look, this is the thing, too. In the Michael Jordan era, okay, teams were still able to hand check, teams were still able to defend. The game has been opened up so much offensively, okay, that it's very hard and very unfair to compare stats today to stats from 15, 20, 25 years ago. It's just infinitely unfair. All right. I was looking at the NBA scoring leaders not too long ago, and I saw that there were, at the time at least, 27 players in the NBA that are averaging at least 20 points per game. All right. 27 players. 10 years ago, when the Lakers won the title, their last championship, that number was 20 players. All right. It was 20 players averaging 20 points or more. In 2003, all right, just before the Pistons won their championship against the Lakers in the upset, I think it was 16 players averaging 20 points or more. In 99, the strike shortened year, it was 14 players that in the NBA, the entire NBA, that were averaging 20 points or more. 8 of those players were post players. That's how much the game has changed in the past 20 odd years. We've gone from a league that was dominated by post players, still in the Michael Jordan era. It was a league still dominated by post players, to a league now totally dominated by perimeter players. Michael Jordan was doing what he did in an era that was still dominated by post players, that was still dominated by defense, that was still dominated by the idea that the pivot is the way to go to win championships. He had to contend against teams that actually had big men, actual centers, not these stretches, okay, not these weaklings, but guys that were tough and tenacious, all right, shot blockers, all right, that were designed to stop a guy like Jordan from penetrating to the basket. And he still was able to do what he did in his era. You can try to use all of the facts and figures and made up stats to try to denigrate Jordan, but this is one of the stats I like to bring up. In the 1998 finals, when he was past his prime, Michael Jordan averaged 32 points per game for the Chicago Bulls. All right. In a series in which they won 4-2, the Chicago Bulls averaged 88 points per game. The Utah Jazz averaged 82 points per game in that 6-game series. Contrast that to the 2018 Cavaliers, all right, who I believe that year they were swept by the Golden State Warriors. They averaged 115 points per game and still lost by an average of 9 points per game in that finals. That's the difference in eras. If you take a guy like Michael Jordan, let's say the 1993 version of Michael Jordan, and you put him in today's NBA with the rule changes and the way the game flows now, the way the game's played and the lack of defense, there's no doubt in my mind that whatever people were blown away with what James Harden did on a team where he got the green light to do that, Michael Jordan would put up numbers that we hadn't seen since the days of Wilt Chamberlain. There's no doubt in my mind of that. And the same goes to a slightly lesser extent to Kobe Bryant. It's not that they played in a weak era. Why do you think Kobe Bryant didn't just come out blazes of glory in the NBA? Because the game was totally different in 1990s. You know what I'm saying? The game was different. And in conclusion, Jordan didn't win 10 scoring titles because of the fact that, you know, by chance. He won 10 scoring titles because of his rare scoring ability. All right. He was a scorer in which the likes we rarely have seen in this league. All right. Unlike a James Harden, who's had numerous 50-point games where he shot like shit, in the 39 times that Michael Jordan has scored 50 points, only one of those games did he shoot under 50%, and that was his first game against the New York Knicks, his first regular season, I should say, 50-point game, where he shot 15 of 31 from the floor, just under 50%. For his career, he was 61% from the floor in his 50-point games, and that's another thing. He was a controlled scorer. When he had his outburst, it was still done within the flow of the game. All right, it wasn't a lot of forced shots. In his prime, at least, it wasn't a lot of forced shots. It never came usually at the cost of the offense. And also, normally, when he did score big like that initially in his career, it came because the team kind of needed him to do it, which is why earlier in his career, the Bulls lost a lot of those games where he scored 40 and 50 points. Whereas toward the end, a lot of times, he would have these outburst games, maybe because someone talked shit to him or called him a con man or said that he was a jump shooter scared of contact like George Karl did. So at the end of the day, Michael Jordan is one of the greatest players of all time. Is he the GOAT? It's debatable. But what you won't do while Too Raw for TVs around is denigrate this man's legacy.